In 1447, Mary of Burgundy married Maximilian I, the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. The marriage resulted in the Habsburgs, one of the most powerful families in Europe, inheriting the 17 provinces of the Netherlands, of which consisted of the small and relatively insignificant Duchy of Luxembourg. Through the 17th century, Luxembourg remained poor and impoverished, seeing war and famine throughout the 1600s and the 30 Years' War. Today, however, this is far from reality. Luxembourg has the highest GDP per capita in Europe at a staggering $141,000. The city of Luxembourg is also a very important city for the European Union. Luxembourg is home to the European Investment Bank, the European Court of Justice, and other EU administration offices. But how did this backwater country that suffered from centuries of occupation from outside forces grow to become one of the most advanced, richest, and important countries on earth? In 1482, the Duke of Burgundy, Philip the Handsome, inherited the Habsburg Netherlands, which included the small Duchy of Luxembourg. For the next 300 years, Luxembourg would stay under Habsburg control, switching between Austrian and Spanish hands. Under the domination of the House of Habsburg, Luxembourg was swept into the many conflicts between the Habsburgs and the Kingdom of France for domination of Europe. In 1542, France invaded Luxembourg twice, but the Habsburgs were able to recover it both times. In 1556, Luxembourg became a part of the Spanish Netherlands and remained a part of Spanish control through the 30 Years' War from 1616 to 1648. In 1635, when France joined the fight against Spain, Luxembourg saw immense destruction and disasters. The Treaty of the Pyrenees ended the war for Luxembourg in 1659, when France gave 3 Luxembourgish fortresses over to France. In 1684, France invaded Luxembourg again and occupied it until 1697, when it was returned to the Spanish. In 1701, the War of Spanish Succession, which was the first major global conflict the world ever saw, and pitted the Holy Roman Empire, Habsburg Spain, Great Britain, the Netherlands, and Portugal against France, Bourbon Spain, Bavaria, Portugal, and Cologne, broke out. During this time, Luxembourg, along with the Spanish Netherlands, were administered by a pro-French faction under Governor Maximilian II Emmanuel, and Luxembourg sided with Bourbon Spain during the conflict. Afterwards, Luxembourg was occupied by pro-Austrian forces, and when the war ended in 1714, Luxembourg was awarded to Austria. The Duchy of Luxembourg was subsequently passed between Spain, Austria, and France, each of which strengthened the fortress and castles of Luxembourg. And these fortifications can still be seen today. After the War of the First Coalition, which started in 1792 and was between the Netherlands, Great Britain, the Holy Roman Empire, Prussia, Spain, and Portugal against France, France invaded Luxembourg once again, and this time conquered it with relative ease. Here, France committed terrible atrocities against the Luxembourgish people, including pillages, massacres, and the destruction of multiple Luxembourgish abbeys. 7 months after the initial invasion, the Austrians surrendered Luxembourg, and the duchy was annexed by France. France initiated several reforms, one of the reforms being the implementation of laïcism, which means that the state would play a more meaningful role in the separation of religion and the state itself. This led to strong outcry from Luxembourg Catholics, which made up the majority of the Luxembourg population. France was also made the official language, and Luxembourgish people did not have access to any and all civil services. In 1798, when the French military imposed military duty for civilians, riots broke out in Luxembourg and peasants started a rebellion, which France was able to suppress rapidly. Even after French occupation, many of the Republican ideologies brought by France still hold a place in Luxembourg to this day. Napoleon's rule over Republican France ended with his fall in 1814, and in 1815 the Congress of Vienna gave Luxembourg the status of Grand Duchy and was given to King William I of the Netherlands. However, the Luxembourg that the Netherlands inherited wasn't like it is today, with many of the duchy being diminished and its eastern districts being handed over to Prussia. The independence of Luxembourg at this time was complex. Luxembourg was an independent state that was united with the Netherlands through William I, but Luxembourg was also a part of the German Confederation. Despite being independent, William I ignored this and subjected the duchy to heavy taxes. This deteriorated the standard of living in Luxembourg, which during the period of Austrian rule in the 1700s had seen much economic expansion. As a result, Luxembourg supported the Belgian revolt against William in 1830. By the mid-1830s, Luxembourg was developing a sense of independence, most of which was through the Catholic Church. While Luxembourg didn't fight a bloody civil war for independence like Ireland, it was not easy for the Duchy either. After Luxembourg supported Belgium against the Dutch, and was considered a province of Belgium from 1830 to 1839. In 1839, Luxembourg became a fully sovereign nation. However, Luxembourg was still heavily influenced by outside powers. When Luxembourg became independent from Belgium, it lost its economic ties with the country and thus experienced economic problems. Even though Luxembourg had fought hard for independence, the country remained an agricultural country with poor and outdated infrastructure, economically insignificant amongst her powerful neighbors. At this time, Luxembourg began establishing its own national identity, being granted its own district under the church, and Luxembourgish was established as the official language domestically. In 1842, the course of Luxembourg's history was changed forever. Luxembourg joined a customs union with Prussia, and this fundamentally changed Luxembourg's economy. When Luxembourg joined this union, the small country gained access to the large markets of Central and Eastern Europe. It was around this time that an iron ore called minette was discovered in large deposits within Luxembourg, and the country started to export said ore to neighboring countries. Furthermore, the construction of the Luxembourg-Thionville Railway connected Luxembourg even further with the German market. Consequently, minette became a cheaper and more profitable alternative to charcoal, which spiked interest in Luxembourg furnaces even more. This resulted in 65 requests from Belgium and German companies to mine minette, and over 2/3 of the minette exported was sent to regions across Belgium and the German Rhineland. Throughout the remainder of the 19th century, the Luxembourg steel industry grew to one of the biggest in Europe, and the nation saw high levels of immigration from places such as Germany and Italy. In 1870, Luxembourg passed a law in which the state took control of all the minette mines, and in 1880, another law was passed which meant that new mining proposals had to be processed by Luxembourg, giving the state even more control over its primary industry. Towards the end of the 19th century and into the 20th century, Luxembourg's steel industry and thus its economy had one major caveat: Germany, with 70% of Luxembourg's production sold to Germany. Not only that, the machinery used to produce steel was from Germany, along with the people to work that machinery. Furthermore, throughout the 1870s, Germany had strict customs laws, which led to overproduction within Luxembourg. The economic troubles that this brought with it were only amplified when the British joined with their own iron industry. Despite these challenges, Luxembourg kept resilient, and eventually the country's hard work paid off. Starting in 1911, a series of vertical integration happened within Luxembourg, and smaller companies morphed into larger conglomerates. All of this work within Luxembourg paid off, and by 1913, Luxembourg was the sixth largest producer of iron in the world and the eighth largest producer of steel. However, the plunge of the European continent into war in 1914 brought new challenges to Luxembourg. While steel and iron output continued throughout the duration of World War I, it was the post-war world that affected Luxembourg the most. Belgian politicians proposed that Luxembourg be joined with Belgium, and within Luxembourg itself, a strong minority was pushing for the creation of a republic within Luxembourg. Despite this, the country remained a monarchy under the rule of Grand Duchess Charlotte, and in 1921, Luxembourg entered an economic union with Belgium. Luxembourg also introduced universal suffrage, and as a result, the Luxembourg Richest Party became the most dominant political wing in Luxembourg. Luxembourg also used the interwar period between World War I and World War II to its advantage in order to earn its global recognition and place on the world map. In 1970, Luxembourg joined the League of Nations, and throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Luxembourg's agricultural industry became less of a major sector and was replaced by the services industry, which remains a main part of Luxembourg's economy to this day. Unfortunately, Luxembourg would have to put a pause on its economic growth in the later half of the 1930s, as Luxembourg was not immune to the radical left-wing and right-wing politics of Europe. Luxembourg's government tried to suppress communist uprisings and aligned herself more towards Nazi Germany, which raised criticism amongst her neighbors. When Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union invaded Poland in 1939 and kick-started World War II, Luxembourg announced her neutrality, but this did not stop the Nazi invasion of Luxembourg. The Luxembourg royal family fled to Portugal and then to the United States as Germany made advances into Luxembourg, and in 1942 they proclaimed Luxembourg a part of the German Reich. At first, Luxembourg passively resisted German occupation, speaking Old Luxembourgish over Germany and initiated strikes against the Nazis. As a result, the Germans sent Luxembourgish citizens to concentration camps, and the Luxembourgish economy seized to a halt. U.S. forces liberated Luxembourg in 1944, and by early 1945, the German forces had been expelled from the country. During World War II, Luxembourg saw 5,259 lives lost and devastating damage to her cities. Under the United States Marshall Plan, Luxembourg began the reconstruction process along with much of the European continent. Along with this, Luxembourg became a large voice in NATO and the European Union. Luxembourg was a founding member state of NATO in 1949, along with 11 other countries. Furthermore, unlike these 11 other nations, Luxembourg voted almost unanimously in favor of joining NATO, something that has never been seen before in history. Also, after World War II was Luxembourg's joining of the European Union, which changed Luxembourgish history forever, making the country one of the most prosperous in the world. In the second half of the 1940s, Luxembourg joined the European Economic Cooperation, a sort of precursor for the European Union that united Western European countries. Indeed, this treaty grew into the Western European Union, a joint economic and military alliance between the United Kingdom, Netherlands, Belgium, France, and Luxembourg. Later, Germany, Italy, Greece, Spain, and Portugal would also join the Western European Union. But in 1950, a major blow would come to Luxembourg. As part of the move towards European integration, the French Minister of Foreign Affairs, Robert Schuman, proposed the European Coal and Steel Community, or ECSC, in which Germany and France pooled their coal and steel industries, and other European countries were open to joining. Luxembourg's main economy at this point was still the coal and steel industry, and the abolishment of customs with Luxembourg's neighbors and biggest trading partners presented a massive problem to Germany. With no other choice, Luxembourg signed the treaty and its establishment of the ECSC, marking Luxembourg's dedication to European integration. Luxembourg held a significant spot in the ECSC, giving Luxembourg's reliance on the steel and coal industry, and Luxembourg was directly represented in all committee meetings. In July 1952, Luxembourg's foreign minister proposed the city of Luxembourg as the ECSC's new provisional place of work, and the other members of the committee agreed. Luxembourg became the provisional seat of the ECSC High Authority, the Consultative Committee, and the Court of Justice for the ECSC. The decision to place these important institutions in Luxembourg solidified the country's place, as John Monnet put it, the crossroads of Europe. The integration with the ECSC was not by any means the end to steel production in Europe, rather it was a catalyst to further production. By 1974, the steel industry in Luxembourg had grown by 3.4 million tons in production since the 1951 numbers, but then a crisis happened. The steel crisis of 1974 saw the collapse of the world steel market due to overproduction and a collapse in prices, coupled by rising energy prices and increased steel production from Asia, which saw the fall of European steel production. In just 1 year, steel production fell in Luxembourg by nearly 2 million tons. Despite this, the Luxembourg of 1974 was not facing economic collapse like the Luxembourg of old, because Luxembourg had found a new story for success: banking. The banking industry in Luxembourg dates back to the 1970s, around the time of the steel industry crash. This was because of American and German banks that established combined loans along with the Eurobond, a bond issued by governments not denominated in that country's currency, pouring into Luxembourg. By the 1980s, banks within the country began offering operations such as cash flow services and wealth management services, which served to push the market further. In 1988, Luxembourg implemented the UCITS directive, which allowed for the sale of mutual bonds between European Union countries. This established the investment fund industry in Luxembourg, and in 2023, the Luxembourg Fund Center is now the largest in the world. In 1989, the second EU banking directive regulated the operation of banks based in one EU member state in other European nations, which prompted non-EU countries to establish their branches in Luxembourg, and this placed Luxembourg near the top of the list as an international banking center. Banking in Luxembourg is extremely diverse, all the way from investment and individual banking to corporate banking. This diversity has allowed for the country's competitiveness, along with growth in individual business models. Banking has also transformed Luxembourg's economy through the profits it brings, with the industry increasing to over 740 billion euros by 2015. Furthermore, net commission income is up 5.8% to 4.3 billion euros, which is an all-time high in Luxembourg. And with technology becoming a more central part of life, Luxembourg has been looking to become a central tech hub for Europe, as it has for banking and before that steel. Also, Luxembourg is in a rather good position to take advantage of the recent tech boom, with software graduates from universities within Luxembourg and the country's close ties with her European neighbors. And Luxembourg's area of strength within the industry lies in autonomous vehicles. Luxembourg is a part of the largest cross-border automotive network, made up of over 500 companies. Will Luxembourg be able to compete with her larger neighbors like Germany, France, and Belgium, just as she was with the steel industry? This question will only be answered with time. All in all, Luxembourg's unique geographical, historical, and economic situation transformed it from a poor agricultural-based economy and society into the richest country in the world. But Luxembourg's economy was pushed forward by the steel and mining industry. It has since shifted into finances and technology. If you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe to the channel, as it would really help a lot. Thank you.